What the hell is that? A little purple ship? That's so gay. Jippo, blow that out of my space. It's blocking my view.
Luka, luka, luka. Coba, coba, coba.
Fire!
Geez, you take one wrong turn on the internet, and a Star Destroyer tries to blow your ass up. Wonder what nutjob is driving that thing. Incoming transmission from Indentured Servant 1. Heyo, Mr. Sith Lord? I'm the Irreligionist, intergalactic YouTube bounty hunter.
What the hell do you want?
Sorry to pop up in your neck of the woods like this. Space woods? Anyways, I'm on the trail of some hard merchandise that may have passed this way. I've been tracking their signal with my signal tracking app, available on the Apple Store. Have you seen anyone? Besides me?
I've blown up quite a few ships lately.
He's a dingo, and he needs to be taught a lesson.
Want me to kill him?
No. God, no. What? Damn. No, I just want to make a response to his video that conflates communism and socialism. Jesus, man. Kill him? Anyways, I'll split the money if you want to go in halves on tracking him down.
I will be the backup if you need me.
Sweet.
Hey, what's up, everybody? How's it going? So, I have a question for followers of mine who believe in socialism, who support socialism, whether it's democratic socialism or whatever.
Well, I do believe in socialism. Pretty sure it is a concept that exists, as much as any concept can be said to exist. However, I wouldn't say that I support it. It is, at its logical extremity, an unconstrained vision of humankind's ability to design a more perfect society, placing, as I see it, more emphasis on the outcome of social systems than on the processes by which those outcomes are achieved. As an economic strategy, a means of allocating resources in a given society, socialism can range from moderate government interference in a mixed-style economy to total government control of the economy with little or no free market elements. But what's your question?
What exactly do you see in socialism that makes it not fundamentally the same thing as communism?
I see a couple of things that distinguish socialism from communism. First is that socialism is, in my opinion, mostly an economic strategy, and communism is a complete economic and political ideology that happens to contain socialist elements. In fact, on most economic spectrums, communism is seen as being a specific subset of the umbrella concept of socialism. And while both do place emphasis on allocating the resources of a given society in an effort to improve everyone's lives, the means they use to achieve this end are different. In a totalitarian socialist state, probably the most extreme form of socialism, the government determines where resources go, often via command or controlled economy. Things like central planning making decisions that would, under other circumstances, be made by the buying decisions of individuals. Communism, on the other hand, would ideally rely on the people themselves to willingly make the trade-offs necessary to maintain a heightened standard of living for everyone without the need for a strong central government. Though even Marx would later admit that a strong government and planned economy would probably be necessary as a stopgap measure in achieving his communist goals. Socialism is embodied in the belief that humans have the ability to design a more beneficial outcome for millions and even billions of people than is currently enjoyed, and usually the accompanying belief that a small group of individuals have the knowledge and expertise to execute this planned outcome. Communism also includes a similar belief, though generally contains a distrust of an elite class and would ideally defer decisions to communal means of decision-making. I say ideally because, importantly, communism has only ever been an idea. The communist regimes people often reference have historically only been stepping stone socialist regimes, totalitarian regimes, often ruled by a communist party on the road to eventually achieving that communist ideal.
And what makes socialism, which is practically the same system as communism, guaranteed that it's not going to end the same way that communism does? Like, where is the logical disconnect?
What we have seen, the supposed communist outcomes, have been largely socialist outcomes. But socialism, like capitalism, often has differing outcomes based on what type of political system is being used in conjunction with that economic strategy. Representative democratic governments can have socialistic economies, and somewhat free market economies can exist inside nations with fascist governments. The outcomes of these systems really can't be weighed against each other. Communism hasn't happened, and socialism can exist to differing degrees in different political atmospheres. Mao's China was socialist, but Sweden also has many socialist elements to its economy, however differently they may be applied. But I'm sure my Sith pal has more info on the particulars of that.
Because, I mean, look at this. Realistically, communism and socialism, what do they have in common? Both systems, the government seizes the means of production, as well as they take hold of anything private, anything relating to private ownership. That meaning things like, you don't own your house, the state does. You don't own the building that your business operates out of, if you're even allowed to run the business in the first place. You know, you own your personal effects, and that's it. You know, you might own your bed and your clothes, but that's it. And in some cases, from what I've heard and from what I've read of the Soviet Union and Mao's China, sometimes even that's not true. So tell me, what makes these two things different?
Property rights are something I also hold dear. But the allowance or disallowance of private property is not a light switch. It's not either on or off depending on socialism or capitalism. Private ownership of homes, cars, or businesses is incremental. The further left on the economic spectrum you go, the direction of total socialism, the less the individual has as property, usually with industry being the first thing to be sacrificed to government control or allocated as public use. In most socialist governments, the idea of private property of a personal nature still exists, though industry and business is to a larger degree owned by the state. Of course, some socialist-leaning nations like good old Sweden have a largely mixed-style economy, with relatively little government-owned business. Communism, as described by Marx, would, as an outcome, have little in the way of property rights, but the means to achieve this would be through a transcending of man beyond the needs of such illusory conditions. Marx saw property as an impediment to man achieving his true social-oriented existence. Socialism as a system would do this through government power, while Marx sought to meet this goal with teaching, initially. Though agreed the outcomes may indeed look the same, the processes were intended by Marx to be quite different. In socialism, it seems to be incidental, a byproduct on the way to social equality. In communism, the dissolution of property is an end goal, through changing the outlook of the people.
Another similarity, you work not to get a paycheck, but to get your rations from the government. With socialism, and especially democratic socialism, what is to stop someone from just saying, you know, I could work at a quarter speed, and I'm going to get the same amount either way, so I'm just going to do that? Well, communism does have an answer for that. Communism puts a gun to the back of your head and says, you will work at full speed, or you will die.
Work incentives are a problem for the types of socialist regimes you have mentioned, but the gun-holding variety, well, that was the ultra-authoritarian tactics of particular socialist governments that just waved around the communist flag. Communism, as an idea, is centered on the social element perceived in mankind by the likes of Marx and Engels, and as such, it sought to appeal to humanity's higher sense of community as a means of incentivizing work.
If you claim to believe in equality of opportunity and not equality of outcome, it is, by that stance, a logical fallacy to support socialism. Because socialism is not, you get out what you put in, it's put in whatever you feel like, but you're gonna get out the same amount anyway. So tell me, what makes these systems different? What is different about them?
I agree that full-on socialism and communism are both more concerned with equality of outcome than with the equality of opportunity, and that is something I fully oppose. I would, however, point out again that the work incentives by the historic regimes of despotic, socialistic governments and the theoretical ideas of communism aren't comparable in any real way, but that communism, as described by Marx, was dependent on the social good, the collective betterment of society as a whole, being itself the incentive for work.
Well, democratic socialism is about democracy, and it's about the will of the people. And what happens when, in a democratic vote, the will of the people elects a toupee-wearing orange baboon that does little more than beat his chest and screech at the media? And I can hear it already. That's the Electoral College. But guess what? He still had nearly 50 million fucking people vote for him. And look, I was one of them. My vote was a fuck you to society, to the establishment, to the system.
At least you voted. Social democracy, as with any true democracy, puts its decision-making in the hands of the people. This isn't a problem with socialism, or communism, if it's a problem at all. It's a problem in this form of governance. Democracy without any constraint leaves decisions in the incredibly complex and fickle realm of public opinion. It has the severe drawback, shared with socialism, of believing that people, in whole or in part, can be trusted to effectively make decisions that govern the lives of others. An unconstrained vision of humankind's ability. I personally prefer a more constrained view of our species. We need checks and balances, even in democracy, to protect us from our own idiocy. Mob rule to me is no better an idea than the rule of some self-anointed elites deciding for everyone what they think is right and expecting me, and everyone else, to accept it.
What happens when democracy doesn't go your way? What happens when democracy doesn't go the way of egalitarianism? Which is why our founding fathers of this nation so brilliantly set us up as a representative republic. Now look, I have my issues with the state that I've outlined in other videos, but I'd sure as fuck rather the representative republic that we have now over pure democracy or pure totalitarianism.
I agree that a representative republic is preferred. It's probably why most nations in the West have a version of this. A representative republic, or representative democracy, is similar to pure democracy as people do possess the power to install officials and aid in governance, but it is necessarily different by allowing the constraints of national constitutions, and often is accompanied by those previously mentioned checks and balances. A system that acknowledges the shortcomings of political visions and humans in general, and allows an evolution of legal and economic systems in an ever-changing world. So yes, representative republics for the win. On this, I wholeheartedly agree, Danny.
That's all I have for this video. Answer that. If you make videos, you want to make a response trying to explain to me how it is you seem to still have this logical disconnect that socialism and communism aren't the same fucking thing, except communism is rational enough to, and I can't believe I'm saying this about communism, but they're rational enough to recognize that people aren't going to work for fucking free, so they've decided to put the gun to people's heads. So that's it for this one. Have a good one.
Basically, I agree with Danny on most of what was said. Beyond that socialism and communism are the same, the two ideas do clearly have overlap, the differences are nuanced, but they are real nonetheless. The equality of outcome they both do tend to espouse, however, I am generally opposed to. I would like to thank the one and only White Sith Male for letting me hang out on his channel. It's pretty swanky. I need to get me one of these Imperial Star Destroyers.